My dear confreres, my dear Redemptorist sisters, my dear sisters associated with our Redemptorist mission, my dear lay missionaries, collaborators, associates in our Redemptorist mission, my dear friends. I welcome you to these 3 days of preparation to celebrate the feast of Saint John Neumann, Redemptorist bishop, the first male American saint in the United States of America. Let us begin today reflecting on the life of Bishop John Neumann. John Neumann was born on the 28th of March in 1811 in a small town called Prachatice in Bohemia, approximately the Czech Republic today. He was the third of 6 children, born in a very pious, devout, and good Roman Catholic family, brought up in the joy of the faith. He went to boarding school, and while in boarding school, he had a great obsession with botany, with the nature, with flowers and fauna. But gradually, he was drawn to the priesthood. At the age of 20, in 1831, he decided to join the seminary. And he went into the local seminary in Budweis. He did 2 years of seminary training and then moved to the National Seminary in Prague. He was a good, diligent seminarian. Something happened during his seminary studies. He felt the desire to be a missionary, drawn first and foremost by the life of the great missionary apostle, St. Paul. Reading the missionary journeys of Paul, John Neumann wanted to be like St. Paul, a missionary to people. Second, missionaries who were working in the United States of America would write letters to seminarians speaking about their missionary endeavors. This really captivated the heart of John Neumann, and so he decided that he would be a missionary to the immigrant people in the United States of America. By 1835, John had finished his seminary studies. He wanted to be a missionary priest in the United States of America. And so he collected whatever money he had and he bought his ticket by boat and set sail in February of 1836 from Le Havre in France to New York. In the middle of June 1836, he landed in New York. As soon as he landed, he looked for a bishop. The Bishop of New York was looking for German-speaking priests who would look after the German-speaking Catholics spread across upstate New York. He was delighted to find the enthusiastic John Neumann, whom he quickly ordained as deacon and then as priest. As a young priest ordained at the end of June 1836, John Neumann was sent to Buffalo, right up in the state of New York. From there, he began to reach out to German-speaking immigrants across the state of New York in the United States of America. He had to cover miles and miles of terrain, hundreds and hundreds of miles, in order to reach a few families, sometimes 20, sometimes 40 families, whom he would stay with, catechize, instruct, preach to, celebrate the Eucharist with, care for their sick, baptisms, with the help of the bishop, confirmations. He cared for the German-speaking Catholics, who were themselves struggling as immigrants in a new land. It was 4 years of being a missionary priest, struggling with extreme temperatures, extreme heat in the summer of July, August, to extreme winters, November, till March. It was not so much the difficulties of a missionary, but rather the loneliness that got to John Neumann. 4 years of work as a missionary amongst German immigrants. He felt lonely. He longed for companionship. He wanted to be part of a community. And so, guided by his spiritual director, he decided to enter the congregation of the Most Holy Redeemer, the Redemptorists, in the United States of America. It was the year 1840. He was warmly welcomed by the Redemptorists in Pittsburgh. There, for 2 years, he did his novitiate, and in 1842, he was professed as a Redemptorist. As a young Redemptorist, he threw himself into whatever was asked of him by his superiors, preaching missions predominantly in German, but also using his native tongue, Czech. He was fluent in Hungarian. He could speak French, obviously English, but he soon realized the importance of Italian and even Irish to listen to confessions, and he mastered both. Working as parish priest in all the Redemptorist areas, surprisingly, while at Pittsburgh, it was the year 1847, John Neumann was appointed vice provincial of the Redemptorists in the northeast of the United States of America. As vice provincial, he served diligently, seeking to guide his Redemptorist brothers to live as missionaries, reaching out to immigrant people. As he himself found the importance of catechesis, he wrote a catechism in different languages for children. He served his 3.5 years as vice provincial, and the year was 1851. He was in Pittsburgh, helping with the building of a beautiful church. And then he was shocked. Pope Pius IX sent a letter appointing John Neumann as Archbishop of Philadelphia. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't imagine himself as a bishop, leave alone an archbishop. It was too much for him to understand. But then, in humble obedience, helped by his spiritual director, he accepted the appointment to be Archbishop of Philadelphia. At that time, Philadelphia was the largest archdiocese in the United States of America, having over 170,000 Catholics, but just 100 priests to care for them. Overwhelmed by the task, but seeking strength and grace from the Lord, he chose as his episcopal motto, "Passion of Christ, strengthen me." Trusting in the strength he drew from the Lord, he put his heart and soul to serve as a pastor, as a shepherd, after the heart of the eternal shepherd, Jesus. He had as his model St. Alphonsus. And just like St. Alphonsus, he reached out to the simple, to the poor, to the despised, to the marginalized, and most of whom were young immigrants who were seeking a new life away from Europe, which was struggling at the time. These immigrant Catholics had a lot of difficulties. New language, difficult terrain, struggling with the subtle persecution from Protestants at the time. John Neumann reached out to them. He made them feel welcome. He made them feel they were the church. He began to open new parishes. He sought the help of different sisters in the education and formation, religious catechesis and formation of young children. John Neumann realized a need for Catholics in the United States of America, education. And so he started Catholic schools. He is the inventor, the founder, as it were, of the Catholic educational school system in the United States of America, so that Catholics would receive wholesome, full Catholic education through Catholic schools. This was a great success and till today remains a gift that John Neumann gave to the church in the United States of America. John Neumann held a synod in his archdiocese. And one of the decisions of the synod was to establish the 40 hours devotion to the Blessed Sacrament. And this was held across the archdiocese, so that at any given time there was a parish in adoration before the Blessed Sacrament. However, everything was not a bed of roses for Bishop John Neumann. Because he spent his time with the poor, with the immigrants, with the marginalized, with the struggling, the rich and mighty, the wealthy and influential did not like this. He did not attend their soirees, their fine dining, and so they began to murmur, grumble. Philadelphia was a much coveted see. Many other bishops from surrounding areas wanted to be Archbishop of Philadelphia. And so they began to send letters to the Holy Father criticizing the personality, criticizing the poor English skills, criticizing Bishop John Neumann. Bishop John Neumann was first to admit and offer his resignation, but instead of accepting his resignation, Pope Pius IX in 1854 invited John Neumann to Rome to be present at the solemn declaration of the dogma of the Immaculate Conception on the 8th of December 1854. What a joy it was for John Neumann to be present in St. Peter's on the 8th of December when Pope Pius IX solemnly declared the dogma of the Immaculate Conception. If we go to St. Peter's today, you will find a plaque with the names of all the bishops present at the declaration of the dogma of the Immaculate Conception. And John Neumann's name is on that plaque, Archbishop of Philadelphia, the only saint on that plaque. He was also present a few weeks later at the Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls of Rome, and his name is on the plaque there as well, the only saint amongst the list of many bishops. It was a joy for John Neumann after the dogma to return home and visit his family, the first time since leaving Prague. He got back by 1855 to his archdiocese, to Philadelphia, and continued to serve with joy, with creativity, with enthusiasm and zeal his diocese. A few years later, he was given an auxiliary coadjutor. One fine day, the 5th of January, 1860, John Neumann was on his way to meet the attorney over a case. On the way, he was going to stop at a post office to check whether a chalice and a paten that he had wrapped carefully to be mailed to one of the priests of his diocese, whether it was sent. But he didn't reach the lawyer's office, neither the post office. He collapsed, a massive heart attack, and died on the steps of a house of a Protestant family. His Redemptorist brothers immediately came and carried his remains to an amazing funeral. The church of St. Peter's, Redemptorist Church in Philadelphia, packed, crowded with people as they celebrated their little bishop. That was the name they had given him. Little because, yes, he was short in stature, but little mostly because he had a big heart for the little ones, the poor, the immigrants, the marginalized, the suffering. He was their little bishop. No sooner that he died, word spread. Miracles began to happen. And a few decades later, the process began for his beatification. In 1921, Pope Benedict XV declared him venerable. In 1963, Pope St. Paul VI beatified John Neumann. And the same Pope, St. Paul VI, canonized John Neumann in 1977, the first male saint of the United States of America. For us Redemptorists, here is one. The little bishop, a Redemptorist with the heart of the eternal shepherd, the heart that reaches out to the abandoned, the marginalized, the poor, and brings them the good news of plentiful redemption. If we might use our expression today, John Neumann was truly a missionary of hope in the footsteps of the Redeemer, in the land of immigrants in the 1800s, United States of America. We seek his intercession for all of us, Redemptorists, the entire Redemptorist family, and all of us, that we might be burning with zeal in proclaiming the good news of plentiful redemption as John Neumann did. Let us seek the intercession of St. John Neumann. St. John Neumann, servant of God and man, your desire to bring all souls to Christ inspired you to leave your family, home, and country. Ask for us the grace to live worthily in the spirit of our baptism, so that all our thoughts, words, and actions of every day will bring God our Father greater honor and glory. Ask for us the graces necessary to help and to serve the poor, the suffering, and the oppressed. May we live as you lived, persevering in every difficulty, to know and to do God's holy will. In this life, may we share your intercession, the protection of Mary, and the grace of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Redeemer. Amen. Prayer for the intercession of St. John Neumann. Merciful Father, you have given me all that I have in this life, even life itself. In all my daily needs, help me to remember the needs of others too. Make me aware of the need to pray to you, not just for myself, but also for the Church, the Pope, the clergy, and people who suffer any need. Make me as selfless as St. John Neumann was. Throughout my life, give me the grace to direct my first thoughts to the service of you and others. Make my prayer, your will be done. Knowing that in your mercy and love, your will for me is my sanctification. I ask this through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Saint John Neumann, pray for us.